Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of
Psycho Opinion.
Wow, the group got it today. This is part of that same group I was just saying I need to do, put in training here, so, I think everybody's doing quite well. And I hope you guys are as well today, the listeners out there, viewers. So, we just had an episode recently, as I'm sure you have probably seen, about the legalization and medicalization of cannabis. And we had Sam with us, and we have Sam with us again today. Just because I feel like there's more to discuss as far as the kind of what we're doing with some of these drugs with the legalization and decriminalization, medicalization. And before I forget, my lovely co-host today is Marlena. I have her here with me today. She was here the other day with Sam as well. And so to get into it, what we're talking about today is microdosing. This is something that I've learned about recently, or I've started looking into it, and talking to Sam here about the cannabis situation, if you will. We got talking about microdosing, and I was like, let's go ahead and put this on film too, because I feel like this is a valuable topic and something people would want to know about. So Sam, it's good to have you with us again today, buddy.
Thanks, dude.
And
appreciate it.
If you want to go ahead and kind of get us started, if you want to go ahead and just kind of give us the basics of what microdosing is, let's kind of define it before we really get into it.
Okay, well, it's simply using like some sort of medicine, like a plant medicine, or specifically what most people are talking about nowadays is like a psychedelic medicine, like psilocybin mushrooms or LSD, and using, kind of like what the name says, it's like a microdose compared to what people would usually take as a regular dose to get the natural like psychedelic effect. So people will take, for example, if you usually would take, say, like 2 or 3 grams of regular psilocybin mushrooms, and you would, trip, as people say, and have an experience that's 6 to 8 hours long. Most people would take like 0.2 or 3 of a gram, and at most. But again, that's everybody would find their limit. But it's almost like taking an antidepressant every morning, or something. Almost every morning, you routinely take a very, very tiny amount of that psychedelic, and people are just seeing pretty incredible things from it.
And that, I'm guessing, is probably like any other substance. It's probably going to be based more on your tolerance, your weight, things like that, as well as
the quality of the medicine.
The quality of the
medicine.
Yes. Yeah. So what is so we're with something like microdosing? Are you building up, or are you kind of trying to stay at the same dose?
Well, I think everybody's journey will be a little different, but I think to kind of stay in term, you're really trying to not feel high. Like, as long as you're basically getting some sort of medicinal or physical relief from that medicine, but you're not inebriated from it, I think then technically people would still consider you microdosing. You know what I'm saying? But like with anything, you might find, I've been taking a tenth of a gram every morning or whatever, and now but my knees are starting to hurt more, or I'm a little sadder this month. Maybe if I step it up a little bit, and they see those effects kind of come back. But that's where I think, with access and education, people might find like a combination of different plant and fungal medicines to like maybe switch it up, just like with cannabis, where there's different strains of cannabis for different effects. And then also people build up a tolerance very quickly. So they switch it up, and, it's variety is the spice of life or whatever. But really, that's where I feel like, choose a different mushroom, for a month or two. But you don't have to really step up the dosage. Maybe just change the mushroom if you have access. But as long as you're not getting high, I think totally people will be like, yeah, you're microdosing. It's like a vitamin.
Yeah, so do you see this? And I know, so I was reading up on this a little bit, and I know that we're still, in a lot of ways, we're in our infancy on education about this. There's not nearly, as far as my research goes, it doesn't seem like we're nearly as far, or even close to nearly as far with the research on microdosing as we are with something like cannabis. I couldn't find that, and what I say by that is that we're doing testing and stuff is what I'm reading in these articles, but obviously it being a little bit of a newer concept, we're not seeing the long-term effects.
Well, a lot of people use cannabis, and I think a much smaller percentage of people use psychedelics in this way that we're talking about. More and more are, because they're hearing about it and being educated, and then there's access there's way more mushrooms around now than there used to be, and like good mushrooms, and people are learning about this, and they'll buy like a dose that people usually would get high on a Friday night back in the day and trip for 6 hours. Now they'll use that for like a month or two in microdoses.
Oh yeah, and I think that, and in a lot of ways, I think the cannabis has opened up the door for these things because,
For sure.
you know, when we talk about these kind of natural substances that have these medicinal factors, of course, you know, grandma back in the day wasn't touching cannabis, but now that we've had more education about this, and now that we've kind of, what do you need? You want the fan on?
I was gonna think about turning that fan on. I don't have to.
No, it's okay. We can have the fan on. As I was saying, though, I think that, you know, grandma who wouldn't have touched the cannabis 20 years ago, now that we have the education and the research done on that, I think that that's kind of a segue that, you know, using these things and finding the natural benefits of them, we're also going to, it's a lot easier now to talk about something like mushrooms. You know what I mean?
Is that okay? Sorry, buddy.
No, it's cool. I was saying that, you know, grandma that wouldn't touch the cannabis 20 years ago, now that we've got all the education on it, and now that it's something that's become more mainstream, and some doctors even stand behind, it would be a lot easier to propose next, possibly microdosing.
For sure.
Using mushrooms.
Yep, and I think that, yeah, a lot of people, if they get true relief from cannabis and they understand it's an unaltered plant medicine, you know, and that it's like, it really comes from the earth that way, and then most of the, like, say, psychedelic mushrooms we're speaking about are the exact same way. I think, yeah, especially if they're educated properly, you know, they're gonna try it if they've tried cannabis, for sure.
What are your feelings or thoughts about, because you had mentioned LSD shortly, and I know that was something I was reading about as well. What are your personal thoughts or beliefs between the difference between the LSD or the mushrooms, you know, of course, being that the LSD is not as natural?
Yeah, yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so I think if you had to pick one, choose the natural medicine, plant and fungal medicine over LSD all day, especially nowadays with people really learning mycology and learning how to cultivate mushrooms properly, and then also selecting and growing different varieties of mushrooms that do produce different effects and are different potencies. And you know, like when the science is where it's at with like that type of mushroom cultivation, then like LSD is like, it's such a powerful substance, and unless you really know where it's coming from, which is almost impossible, you know, then it's almost like I feel like you're less apt to potentially have a problem with, again, a natural medicine compared to something like that, you know. And but again, it's like a, you know, I think that, you know, yeah, it's really in all of who you know, but really, if you have to pick, go with the mushrooms or something like a cactus. You know, there's a couple other different, you know, plant medicines that
Talking about like peyote at this point?
Yeah, peyote could be one of them. Like mescaline is an extract of peyote. Again, you actually are probably more likely to find an American with a peyote cactus that might know how to do a simple extraction on some of the buttons if they actually are old enough to harvest. Yeah, and again, it's like one of those things where it's nowhere near enough for them to sell and make any money, but for like a few doses at home for them and their family and friends, like if you know what you're doing, it's, you know, like, well, there's the San Pedro cactus. Like, again, I'm a little out of my depth here, but that's a cactus that if you look it up online, you'll be like, I've seen that everywhere. Yeah. And it's basically like a tall, slender cactus, and you know, you can harvest that and get a specific, you know, it's not like peyote, but it's powerful, and it's considered a psychedelic medicine, and you know, it's just up to you not to be, you know, caught doing a bunch of that or trying to sell a bunch of that. But like, if you really dive into the whole of it's either entheogens or entheogens, I'm pretty sure, but that's the encompassing word for like plant and fungal medicines. Yeah. And you know, you're gonna find way more examples in the natural landscapes that, you know, that really, if you extract the DMT out of it or these other things, you probably could produce your own microdosing medicine, but you really need to educate yourself or actually be taught by somebody that knows what they're doing. But all that, again, is natural. It comes from the earth, and extractions are different than like manufacturing something like LSD. You see what I'm saying? So it's that's to kind of
still kind of cracks me up. I mean, I don't know. It's something that's always kind of put a smile on my face when I think about something like peyote or it being illegal. That you know, the police or the government, whatever the powers to be, can come along and nail you, if you will, for, you know, taking part in a cactus that's naturally grown, even on your own property or whatever else. it's just funny to me that
In Texas, there's a lot of land in like South Texas, I think, that naturally has a lot of peyote cacti on it. Maybe even in New Mexico and Arizona, maybe too. But there's also that frog. Most people have seen this Vice video recently.
I've heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, that it's like, I think it's called a Bufo alamaris frog or something.
like licking the frog or touching the frog
No,
gets you.
this specific one is, and it's terrible what people are doing to the frogs, but basically they secrete like this gland will shoot out this like.
It's like milking the frog.
Yeah, basically, and they put it on a piece of glass and like evaporate it out, and then they smoke the powder or whatever. They smoke the extract, but it is like this incredibly intense psychedelic experience that So, and I think that the video probably drew a bunch more attention to it. Which again, the poor frog, but the guy that did the interview, this guy named Hamilton Morris, and again, anybody interested in microdosing or psychedelics or plant medicine in general, look up Hamilton Morris if you don't know who I'm talking about. He's a journalist. He does fantastic work on research and explaining these things far better than I ever could. But basically, he in that show, he literally drew out how to completely manufacture synthetic. Well, it's 5-MeO-DMT, I think, which is the compound that you're going after in that frog. And I felt like that was his way of saying, save the frog, you can get the same effects from this, if you really want that. But again, these are things that...
So you're killing the frog to do this? I haven't seen the video. You said like milking. Do frogs have nipples? Is that what
I can't
are we
remember
doing?
if it kills them, but I know it completely traumatizes the hell
sort
out
of like extraction from the animal is considered milking.
Okay.
Yeah, they somehow get it to almost like a snake would spit venom.
Brings me back to meet the parents. Like, I have nipples. Can you milk me, Greg?
Yeah, no. They
So-
I've heard of like toads or frogs that secrete it from their back, and
Yeah,
they
you-
go and like they scrape the
I
frog.
thought there was like a frog that like I thought I heard years ago like there was like a frog if you licked it or something.
There
you
is.
could, like,
Can,
trip
yeah,
or some shit.
poisonous.
I think that's like down in like the Amazon or one of those places, but the ones we're speaking about are like on American soil.
Yeah.
But basically, yeah.
Now, these are special frogs, guys. Don't go around fucking with frogs.
Yeah,
like
don't.
just.
But really,
Yeah, not a good idea.
But when it comes to microdosing, just to stay on topic, people almost always nowadays are talking about psilocybin mushrooms. At least the people
Yeah.
that I'm like kind of, the circles that I'm hearing and all that. It's
Yeah.
basically that it's very rare that somebody has the access to LSD that they know is clean and that they really can actually dose that low, to like actually microdose LSD. That's kind of hard.
And honestly, in my life, I've been around some pretty people, and I've never heard of anybody having peyote actually.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's probably pretty hard to come by. I've never once in my life had anybody offer me peyote or say they're going to do
That's a little more
peyote.
rare. I think if you go towards the southwest or the west, you
Yeah.
might find it a little more.
Probably
Yeah.
totally a regional thing, really, more or less.
Yeah. The 70s might have been a little different. When I speak to the old timers, like a lot of them in like the late 60s, 70s, when you speak of LSD or you speak of mushrooms, most of them are like, yeah, I've done that. Yeah, I've definitely done some mescaline or LSD or peyote, but a lot of them say mescaline.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of big. So.
Yeah, I remember the Doors movie, Jim Morrison going on his spiritual quest or whatnot with the peyote.
Okay.
So we're talking about, so far you've talked about antidepressants, kind of being an antidepressant. I've read that it gives you some energy. What are the other beneficial factors to microdosing? Or is it, or do you just kind of see it being like a replacement of antidepressants?
I mean, I can always roll if you want me to.
Keep going, yeah.
So basically, just from what I've heard, is a lot of people have been like, this is better than any antidepressant I've ever tried, or this is better than any anti-anxiety medication I've tried, or it's as good as with no side effects, and I get energy, not a lack of memory or sleeping, things like that. So like it's kind of like almost with cannabis. It's like I had one of my homies. He pretty much was like, look, cannabis will help us cope, and it can heal some things, but it's not a cure-all, or like it's not like I absolutely adore cannabis. You know what I mean? But he was like, but mushrooms heal, and he was just like straight up, the proper appreciation and use of that medicine will heal you. and pretty much, it's kind of the proof is in the pudding. And I'm around quite a few people that are, diehard cannabis people. They use cannabis all day, every day, and they have ailments that they suffer from, and then they start to harness mushroom medicine, and it's kind of crazy what happens. And so it's just kind of like it's like chapter 2 of the medical cannabis thing. And like the cannabis, we talked a little bit about it, but the cannabis industry is almost like kind of not crashing, but crashing in some ways.
Yeah.
Like the price of a pound is lower than it's ever been, and that's kind of been like on this route since last season. There's a lot of growers that are really good cultivators and have fantastic spots all over the West Coast that are pretty hidden, and they've been able to cultivate cannabis safely for decades, and now they've switched over to mushrooms because the price of a pound of psychedelic mushrooms or psilocybin mushrooms it's worth more than most cannabis. And now there's a huge demand for microdosing, and also just hey, I'm going to microdose, but hey, once every 1 or 2 weeks I'm going to take a nice dose for like a Friday night where I'm gonna take 2 or 3 grams and have a nice little time, and or I need to process some shit, and I really want to take a big thing. But so again, I think access, like I said, the availability of it, and then the quality of that medicine. It's not just like every now and again people find a cow pasture like back in the day and they pick them all and dry them on their apartment floor. Like it's a completely commercialized thing now.
I feel like it's a lot easier out in the public also, instead of lighting up a joint.
That's a good point.
To distress, you can just go and eat a chocolate or eat a few mushrooms.
Heck
and it not be.
A lot of my friends make these little caps, and they're basically like the tiny little gel caps you'd have like a vitamin powder or something in, and they just have a fat microdose in there. And it's one that I usually feel those. I don't get high, but I totally get like tingly, almost feel kind of glowy for like 3 or 4 hours. Like if I was looking at you and I started talking about pretty much anything, if I was at all excited about it, I'd probably come off very, very excited about it. And it's what I've noticed is that a lot of mushrooms, I get kind of teary-eyed. So like I'm not sitting there crying, but like I got welled up eyes, and I still roll.
I giggle.
Yeah, so
too much.
But again, that's like I feel like if you're feeling like that, then and you really want to microdose, take it down a little bit. But like it's as simple as having like a little capsule and take it and get right on with your day.
So there, and some of the stuff, I don't know if you know much about this, but some of the stuff I was reading on was also talking about having maybe even regenerative properties to the brain, possibly, as far as memory, as far as basic function of the brain, possibly.
So is the little bit that I know about that is lion's mane mushroom is the one that like you're going to hear a lot of talk about actual regrowth in the brain. Now there's, I'm sure, multiple ones out there, and I'm sure there's not that much actual study, maybe verified white paper study type stuff like on lion's mane at this point, like on psychedelic varieties. But lion's mane has been proven to do that, and you're going to find a lot of legal mushroom. Lion's mane is not a psychedelic mushroom. It's an edible mushroom, but it's like a very nutritious, powerful mushroom that's being cultivated way more now in the past few years. Like, just before I forget it, anybody listening to this that's at all interested in fungal medicine or mushrooms in general, look up Paul Stamets. And, that's Paul Stamets is like, he is like the modern day, he's a modern mushroom guru. He is like the grandfather of modern mycology with like, cubensis and
I know that I was definitely very excited about that because Alzheimer's runs in my family.
Yeah.
So kind of reading an article that sort of gives you an idea that there might be hope through some of these, especially natural medicines, to maybe probably not stop, but at least slow down or maybe hopefully have a little bit of regression for these symptoms.
Or just to produce a higher quality of life. That's kind of, you know what I mean? But some of them I think can really reverse or slow down stuff.
My grandfather died of Alzheimer's, and it was absolutely one of the most terrible things to see someone go through. So, to kind of have that, I mean, it really does bring hope along, and it's nice that we're at a point now where we are looking at some of these, previously illegal substances to sort of discover these extra, medicinal purposes. So where I guess my next question would be, so right now I'm not entirely sure, but is this legal anywhere? Are the microdosing, or are we still in the very beginning stages where people are starting to do this, but it's not really, you can't really do this. I mean, where are we at with that?
It's kind of like where medical cannabis was like 25 years ago.
Okay.
You know, like
So like Washington State type area, Oregon, up in that area?
So Oregon was kind of like Oregon was like the first place to really kind of decriminalize all drugs, and then also like really be like, we don't care that much about mushrooms. And but I think Denver might have been the first like actual like big city that kind of put in an ordinance that was just like, we are completely decriminalizing mushrooms, even small home cultivation we're not going to give a damn about. And like the amount of possession that they were like, we don't care about is pretty significant. And I think that it kind of like allowed certain people to exist in a gray area where if they wanted to set up an operation and take care of themselves and their buddies, they're never going to have a problem. Now, if they wanted to kind of commercialize it and start selling pounds of mushrooms, or going out there and selling tens of thousands of microdose hits at like, festivals or something on the weekends, they have these almost open air drug markets, but they're like actual farmers markets, and they're really actually pretty dope. In a lot of legal cannabis states, it's a perfect place for not only community, but for real caregivers to give high quality cannabis at a really cheap price. It's like a direct farm to table thing with patients and people. But what I've seen is that there is a mushroom table there now, every now and again, even up in Michigan. And it's fantastic, though. It's actually very professionally done, and the people that are like, selling you these microdoses, and other fungal medicines, they're highly, like, they'll educate the hell out of you. They'll, they'll tell you anything that you want to know about it. But Ann Arbor and Denver are the two that, like, I know right off the top of my head that have pretty much said, hey, if you want to be a doctor and you want to run some sort of, like, therapy for vets and do some stuff with PTSD or anything like that, like, we're never going to mess with you, and then also if you're doing home cultivation of this stuff, you are not a priority. Like we have much better things. And I think you're going to find like before I left Michigan a couple of months ago, I know that Detroit had basically had the same thing on the ballot. Like the same people that kind of organized it in Ann Arbor, I think, it kind of went to Detroit and kind of put that together and was like, all right, we need to let Detroit vote on it as well, because that's the warehouses and all the different things there, they could really do some cool things. And when it comes to almost like those farmers market style things to get the entheogen medicine out.
So I'm wondering, like, if being where we are, and there's personal growers, there's small farmers, things like that, it almost like freaks me out a little bit, though, because I'm thinking like, wow, man, there's so many good qualities, there's so much hope, there's so much it's so interesting to see how these things could really help people, with the PTSD, the anxiety, the depression, the possibly even Alzheimer's. Now, what I turn to is, and we're making the money symbol over here, and you might know what I'm about to say, is that my concern is this going to possibly also become a thing where, like, the medical companies come in, and then it becomes sort of, now, if you don't have insurance, you can't afford these things, because that's kind of what medical companies do. They, kind of fuck you over when it comes to things that you need. And I mean, I know people that need fucking insulin that can barely get it at this point.
Right. I think, unfortunately, that so as with cannabis, same thing with mushrooms and MDMA therapies and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think that the pharmaceutical industry is very powerful with their lobby.
Yeah.
And I think that they have to have a plan for all this, but ultimately, can you imagine the dent in their pocket if the masses were educated that in their backyard or in their closets they could grow medical cannabis, only a couple plants, really with the technology, the education, and the genetics, you can take care of your needs and your family. You do not need to go to a store and buy it. Same thing with fungal medicine. I think that's got to scare the shit out of them, because of all the things we've talked about, that it can, again, if you have the right people giving you the right varieties and cutting out a ton. Like, I've spent a long time figuring out what varieties give you energy or take your pain away, or like that CBD can do this, but only if it's administered these ways. Like someone new that needs it now can come in and talk to someone like myself, and I can be like, do this, this, and this, and get right to it. Same thing with fungal medicine and microdosing. And I feel like either the people are about to, like, kind of do what they're doing in Denver and in Ann Arbor and slowly do what they've done for medical cannabis and give the power to the people, state by state, region by region, and the federal government's just going to be like, okay, we got to just give it to the people. And now there is going to be commercial companies that come in and fight, but we're not going to completely take it away from the people. It'll be kind of like it is now in a lot of legal states, where there's a huge commercial presence and it's killing most of the small farmers. But the big benefit is this, that the general consumer is getting cheap, pretty damn good weed. Also, if you want to grow your own, you can grow your own on some levels. That's the good life. My biggest concern is that pharmacy will lobby government, and not just pharmaceutical companies, but basically mainly them, will lobby the government to take all home grow rights away for not only cannabis, but for fungal medicine, because it'll all be 100% money driven. And then they'll drive the quality and variety of medicine down, and access. They'll make it available, but again, it's a terrible thing to take that freedom and power away from people, especially right as people are learning about it. And that's why I think that it's such a powerful thing. I don't see people letting go without a real fight, and that's why I think the more people you can get to cultivate just one plant or to grow one
Even have a little knowledge of it.
yeah, then they're gonna know what to fight for. They're gonna want to write their senators and make calls and say, hey, you can't let these corporations take these rights away before we even really get to live with them and heal.
And maybe I'm not the guy to do that. Maybe you're not the guy to do that, but I really hope. I'm not going to get into that, 'cause then we could spend 2 hours on that. But it's just it would really burn my ass and just pisses me off how much the government gets involved with those things.
Yeah.
And like you said, I mean, the perfect phrase, power to the people. It's to be sitting on something so valuable and something that could help so many people, and then to come along and kind of be like, well, we want to make money off of this, we're not making what we want, and kind of fucking everybody over. Shit like that needs to stop.
So before I forget this, and I know this is about microdosing, but in the medical cannabis space right now, there are huge corporate cannabis grows. A lot of them, some of them started by actual people like myself that kind of came. There was a small dude that kind of came up and tried to start a small company. Regardless, they are lobbying in their state. There's one group in Michigan specifically, and the same group basically is titled a little bit differently in every state, but it's kind of the same lobby group, collection of multi-state operators, and they are lobbying for home grow rights to be taken completely away and for caregiver rights to be taken away. It's insane. So they let us basically sacrifice everything and build the industry, and then supply the genetics and medicine most of them are working with, and now they're literally trying to take all that shit away.
I was literally thinking about that earlier, actually, and you took the words right out of my mouth. The thoughts I was having earlier about that, because while you were saying how we are kind of allowed to do this at this small scale, and that they are allowing doctors to do this and that, I was thinking to myself, is this a way to collect information without actually having to put in the work, the time, the effort, the money, and is that something that they could potentially take away?
Yeah, well, I think that info's always being collected, that's for sure, but what a lot of people think it is about the money. I think right now with the price crashing, I hear a lot of people in the industry talk kind of like about, is this kind of and I don't usually think on this meta level, to be quite honest, unless I really have to, but so many people in the industry are kind of like, man, I wonder if they kind of orchestrated this crash where they kind of saw a lot of people invest a lot of money and really develop the markets aggressively in all these different states, and now these specific multi-state operators that are already in with politicians, writing the policies, giving them to the politicians, saying, make this law, pretty much. Is there something here where they're going to pretty much crash the market to where the value of the companies plummet? They go around and snatch them all up for pennies on the dollar, consolidate the market, and then pretty much work with government to kind of go forward on that. So like that's kind of what I don't know what's happening, but it wouldn't surprise me. But I think I had another point there.
I think that honestly it's almost a shame that we would even be sitting here discussing what the actual motive would be in the future.
Yeah.
Because it's just sad that we have to live in a world like that, where it's just all these basically fucking games for rich people, corporations, pharmaceutical companies to all get rich off of the farmer's back, if you will, and it's just such bullshit. Before I get on that rant, Marlena, everything we've discussed so far, where are you standing? How do you feel about all of this? Do you have any questions, comments, concerns?
No. I have recently tried microdosing for myself, and I really feel like it helped anxiety wise. I have a lot of anxiety during everyday comings and goings, and
So tell us what that felt like since you've done it. Is there any way you could kind of express in words how what was the
it
process?
just made
here?
me
You
feel a lot more relaxed. I end up getting a lot of anxiety, the sweaty palms, the racing heart, even just going to a simple place like getting gas or the gas station or buying cigarettes. And I felt like I could take on the world. You know, I could go anywhere. I could do it all, mental and physical relaxation, and I was just stress free, and it was nice.
How about the energy level? Did you feel energy?
Most definitely, a lot more than smoking cannabis, actually, to some level, and I felt like it lasted a little longer than maybe if I had smoked a joint or.
But you weren't having any of the visuals or anything like that.
No, I mean, I had taken mushrooms, you know, years ago, and I kind of knew how much to take for my body weight and my tolerance and stuff, and just kind of took that a little bit, and I felt like it was enough to just, you know, give me the relaxation that I need to go about my day.
Yeah, the energy you get when you're not like fucking nervous and stuff, it's incredible. Like, you know what I mean? Like when anxiety is not like eating all your energy, like you can be so much more productive. And
See, I almost feel like I don't have the energy to be anxious lately.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like can't fucking I can't have anxiety because I'm just too fucking tired for that shit.
Right.
That's how I feel, but I don't know.
I don't know how people live without cannabis, bro. You know,
Yeah.
just to be honest.
So with you know, and I don't know how much more we really have to go here because like we said, you know, I mean, it's kind of new. There isn't a whole lot. I mean, there is a whole lot. I'm sure there's people that can talk our ears off about microdosing, but you know, it's just to set up kind of a introduction to this here. What about negative side effects? You know, short or long term. Is there anything that you would have to say about that?
I mean, I think my only concern with this kind of stuff is the source. That's why as a cultivator myself, like I'm always going to advocate for if you can cultivate your own, do that, and that includes mushrooms nowadays too. So, but if you cannot, just if you know your source and that source is a good source, he's tried those mushrooms himself before he's given them to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he also knows what he's doing. You know, so. Other than that, it's like start small, start very, very small. You can always go up, you know, it's harder to control coming down.
Yeah.
But also never take it out on the road. Don't ever do it in a car.
No.
Even if it's a microdose, your first 2, 3, 4, 5 times, like just,
Yep.
you know, try and if you got to go somewhere that day, make sure that's scheduled at like 3, 4, 5 o'clock and you're taking that microdose at 8 or 9 o'clock, you know.
You have
just
someone to
in
pick
case.
you up.
Yeah, just
And
exactly.
as we said in the show about cannabis, I just want to make sure because this is my show. We are definitely talking about being responsible about using all of these
100%.
substances.
Absolutely.
And you know, you should definitely know what you're doing, you know how much you're doing, and just don't do anything to put yourself or anybody else at risk. Is the most important thing, because what we're talking about here is we're talking about using these things in a positive, medicinal way that really these things can help. And I mean, I would just hate to see anybody just take advantage of those things or kind of be loose about it and harm themselves or anybody else.
Yeah.
Even though they are natural substances, it's still
They're powerful.
you know.
You
They are
gotta
very
treat them with
powerful.
respect. But again, once you understand them and once you feel comfortable with them, they're like just like with and I kind of, it's not that I hate comparing it to it. It's just it's like annoying. It's really the only thing to compare it to. But alcohol, like you can think of it like alcohol. Like you know, you might have a like an extra couple of drinks on a Friday or Saturday night. I know quite a lot of people that work hard, you know, pay all their bills, raise great kids, and on a Friday or Saturday, if their kids are at another kid's house and like, you know, the husband or wife is completely sober, you know, they want to take a hero's dose and take 7 or 10 grams of mushrooms and go to space for, you know, 7 hours, they'll do that because again, that's better than they don't drink any alcohol for the next 2 weeks. They don't go to therapy. They, you know, they do their emotional cleansing, or they take their mental vacation, which is a very cheap vacation. They don't have to go spend a ton of money out somewhere. They're on their own property or in their house with their family.
Oh
safe.
yeah, and you can go a million miles away
Yes,
for
sir.
you don't even get the jet lag.
Right. But again,
So-
microdosing is probably, if you really did that every morning and you ate well and you tried to, like, you know, you were productive during the day after microdosing and you got a good night's sleep, then I would assume that you're not going to really feel the need to kind of blast off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Unless you're really you got a high pressure life, But
Yep.
yeah, it's balance. I think that moderation and balance and respect and damn, those types of medicines are way better than anything you can get from the doctor for most stuff.
And we talked about the idea of how you could even overdose on CBD or cannabis, how you can overdose on anything. We talked about that in the last show. What is, I mean, I'll be honest, I did mess around with mushrooms a little bit when I was, in my teenage years and stuff like that. Nothing too crazy, and I can honestly say that I've experienced a bad trip, so I could definitely, answer questions about that.
I've never had a bad trip either.
Me neither.
Powerful trips to where I can't really do anything but just ride that way for a few hours.
I don't want to take away from the medical part of what we're talking about, but I did have a bad trip, and it was probably the most miserable 8 hours of my life.
Was that mushrooms?
Yes.
Yeah, do you remember how many grams you took?
Dude, at that point in my life, I don't even know if I knew what grams were. I was just kind of a dumb kid.
That's why you should always start off small and work your way up.
I was kind of a dumb kid, like a lot of us were when we were teenagers, and dude, my buddy got a bag of mushrooms, so let's go ahead and do it.
Eat a handful.
Yeah.
I actually felt terrible about it because it was with one of my ex-girlfriends, and she kind of grew up in a very strict household, really didn't experiment much with things. So she wanted to experiment a little bit, and I was like, my buddy got a bag of mushrooms, let's go ahead and have a good night, because I had a good trip before that. I've only taken it a few times in my life, and I've had good experiences, so I was like, let's go ahead and get this, and then she also had a terrible trip, and just the two of us, it was 8 hours of hell.
That sucks, dude.
It was almost like when we were coming down, it's almost like the lights of heaven were opening up. And by no means am I saying with my experience that this is what's going to happen to anybody. I'm just saying that, I've had a bad trip. Which leads me to kind of the question I was going to get at is overdosing. So what is the absolute bottom line worst you can do with mushrooms? Pretty much just throwing up, feeling sick, and, is there...
Again, I'm not a doctor here, but I'm pretty sure that, you're going to have to eat an absolute insane amount for it to go past you throwing up and passing out, and just staying basically tripping, meaning there's a scale. You can literally Google this as well, and it'll be okay, up to 1 gram is a microdose considered to most people, and it'll say these are the effects you should experience or no effects. At 1 to 4 grams, you'll get basically basic visuals, meaning that you do not have hallucinations. You have what most people refer to as visuals, where this checkerboard pattern on the table, it'll be here, but the the squares will be kind of maybe rotating or looking like they're floating a little bit, or the edges will be a little wavy a little bit,
Like with LSD and stuff, colors might be brighter or more vibrant.
Very
or
much
more...
so, and almost
move.
the edges might bleed together a little bit, stuff like that. Then once you pass about 4, 5, 6 grams, 7 grams of mushrooms, that's when some people genuinely can kind of start to have a true psychedelic trip where they're probably going into a little bit of a different world, as people say, or they're seeing things that really aren't there, or they're hearing things, audio hallucinations, but or it's harder for them to communicate. They're kind of in their own little world, and they're not they're totally okay. They're just having a powerful experience.
Yeah,
some people will go introspectively and really kind of
have that philosophical.
And then some people, they're just I'm 100% in this for the creativity and just kind of seeing what sounds and pictures do, and I don't, you know what I mean? And I actually really, it really kind of depends, I think, on you and the mushroom you're on and the setting you're in and the mood, and that's again the beauty of kind of life and being able to experience
Definitely
this.
where you are and who you're with contributes.
I would like to see, for people that do want to try mushrooms, whether it be recreationally or medicinally. I've always ever experienced people like, my buddy's got some mushrooms. I've never had the variety. I've never had somebody be like, hey, here's 10 different kinds of mushrooms.
And explain to you what the different, see, that's happening.
And that would be interesting to kind of see, it almost brings you to, it's a funny example, but like Mario. You know, you got the different mushrooms. One
The
makes
colors,
you taller. One
yeah.
makes you
Yeah.
shoot fucking fireballs.
That's great.
You know, so, you know, it'd be nice to have that, somebody spread that out and be like, this one you're going to shoot fucking fireballs, dude. This one right here, you're going to feel
That'd be
fucking
awesome.
tall. You know, this one right here, you know, you're going to be able to, you know, bone the princess for 3 hours straight without a problem. I don't know, whatever the case may be, that was probably a little too far with that exit, but the
Hey,
point
man, there's
is,
got to be one. Well, it's like, so I'd say the most popular mushroom for the past probably 3-4 years has been what is called the penis envy mushroom, and it really grows to look like a big dick, and like it's a very powerful, like most cubensis most mushrooms that produce psilocybin, like they it's like a mutated version of kind of the normal one that most people in like the past 20-30 years have grown up on. There's a bunch of different kinds, but apparently there was like 1 or 2 kinds that were like the commercial ones that most people grew and were easiest to grow and could, you know.
anytime I've came across in my life, it seems like they've looked about the same.
Yeah.
You know,
I had
like
different colors.
like a skinnier cap, and like I mean
Yeah.
a skinnier stem and like a little like mushroom or a like almost like an umbrella cap type.
yeah,
thing.
and your stem is, you know, usually kind of that little bit of blue,
See,
kind
that's
of.
that's the medicine. That's the psilocybin.
Yeah.
Now the penis envy ones have like super thick stalks, and the top literally looks like a dickhead.
Wasn't that was that super bad where all the best foods are shaped
Yes.
like dicks?
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
just
And they're apparently about 10 times stronger than most mushrooms. So that
Wow.
was so like most people like and so if you were to like I'm going to cultivate mushrooms at home for microdosing or for whatever, you can go online and actually order penis envy spores from like so many different places legally in this country. It's not
Wow.
even funny. They can sell the spores. Like there's a lot of companies that will sell you a kit, and it's basically like a Tupperware container with all the media prepped and everything you literally need. And then they won't sell you that plus the spore. Most of them won't. Some of them might be doing it by now, but usually you buy the kit from one place and then they'll recommend a spore distributor, and then you can pick your different
so
mushrooms.
you're kind of going through all the different.
Yeah, just kind of split it up a little bit,
Yeah.
I guess, for liability or whatever. But
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, probably legalities and stuff. I'm sure, you know. Well, we
Yeah.
don't get into that, but
it's
we
like,
just sell this.
if you do something with the spore, that's on you, you know. But I will say it's like easier than most people probably believe. And again, YouTube, I think I recommended for on the cannabis episode. I mean, YouTube will blow your mind at actually how good information there is out there. I mean, you got to sift through some stuff, but you'll see who's not an idiot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's it's interesting. And I mean, I think that, you know, I had to, because my experience when I was younger and everything was kind of more recreational. I mean, I definitely wanted to bring that fun aspect up into
sure.
it.
Oh, dude, I think the wall. Like, I remember my first trip of LSD in college. I had no idea what I was getting into. I was smart enough to like know that I had my apartment, all my bills were paid, there was no trouble. I had the doors locked. I had like food for 3 days. Like, who knew what was gonna happen? I'd seen Fear and Loathing plenty of times. I was excited.
Love Fear and
but but yeah. That hit of acid was like 12 hours. Like, I really couldn't stand up for maybe 6 or 7 of those hours. It was unbelievably powerful. And I remember thanking the actual piece of sheetrock, like the wall, like just being like, when it got done flapping, you know, and moving around, I remember being like, dude, thank you for what you do. Like, you're a great wall.
Holding up the ceiling.
You hold up my roof, dude, and you're not moving around, and I am so appreciative of you. And then it's like I caught myself, and I was like, this is why they sound like this, dude. They learned to just like empathize with it, and I was like, so that was my first trip. It was.
Maybe that would be maybe that'd be really useful and helpful to society if we actually did empathize and interact with even just the simplest things that help us get through the day.
Well, this is why the therapies I think are being powerful.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of having that humbleness, realization of life and the things around us. We get so one-sided, tunnel vision, wrapped up in our own shit. One thing that came to mind while you were talking, though, is I've always been under the impression, and I've had good and bad trips, but I've always been under the impression, what would you recommend if somebody was like, let's go recreationally, of course, since that's kind of what we're on, your surroundings. You want to make sure, like you said, you're kind of in a good spot, you're not worried about much, not a whole lot of things bothering you. So how important do you guys feel like that is, and what would you do, since obviously you guys have both had experiences, to kind of set that up?
I've been to a friend or family's house, somewhere that I know I don't have to worry about
People
you
that
know.
you're safe with.
Exactly. Yeah, anybody to have my back in case anything were to go wrong. I know that I am in a safe spot. And that's usually fine for me. And I've gotten to the point where I can handle myself by myself, but I still always just.
Are you setting up the black light posters with big mushrooms on them? And fucking, actually, it's
I
funny.
like to vibe. I like to do puzzles, actually. Puzzles are really fun. And just listen to some music and just vibe. Kind of get in the mood.
Okay. All right. What do you think?
Yeah, so I don't recommend doing it in public.
Especially not your first time.
Yeah, but also even if it's like your fifth or sixth time and
Yeah.
you're like, unless you're way out in the middle of nowhere and you have a couple of people that can handle shit if stuff goes sideways because you can't predict the world. And I just feel like if you're going to be doing like, if you're really trying to have some experiences, like it's, if you have a safe home that you feel comfortable in and the people there are safe and good to you, then that's the perfect place to experiment with psychedelics and learn to drive that spaceship. I mean, because that's really, and every substance is different, and the dosages are different, and then once you really learn that, I think that's when you can almost tolerate different settings. Like, hey, I'm going to take this and go into this concert, but if you haven't taken psychedelics and you like take a psychedelics and then go into a concert, you might just be it might just all mesh
More
together,
anxiety.
and it's like, this is awesome, or you're liable to be in the bathroom like staring at the floor going, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
Yeah.
So before I lose that thought is, nowadays when I think about my buddies who make like the really good caps that are like, again, they're a little bit more than a microdose, you know, but they're like a good 2 to 4 hours of like, it's almost like, you know, you give it, it's like I just smoked a nice joint of some good weed. Like to go on hikes now, or to like go, you know, actually go out in public, but wait till I'm in the environment, out of my car. I take my microdose, I drink, eat a little snack, and then I go on like a 4 or 5 hour hike. Like I cannot wait to get out of the garden to do that. Like now that I have access to that medicine, I haven't done that, but I know a lot of my friends do it. They'll take weekend trips just so they can kind of consume their medicine and be in nature. They're not trying to trip. They're trying to just be like, hey, I'm taking some weed and some microdoses, and I'm just gonna enjoy nature.
R&R.
There you go. It's a
Now,
good
what
way
is
to put it.
now? How would it? So you said 4 or 5 hours there. So are you? What's the rate, or how often would you be microdosing? Would you want to hit another one on the way back from your hike?
Well, if I was microdosing, I probably wouldn't be taking those. But like, it really just depends. Like, if you see that like I'm not getting high, but I want something by dinner time, you might find yourself taking a dose in the morning and a dose in the evening time. It might really just be up to, again, you that day, your mood, and the mushroom that you have available at that point.
Yep.
And you don't think to also bring it right back around and because we will be wrapping up here in a few minutes. So we talked about this possibly replacing antidepressants, and that makes me very happy because personally I don't like taking pills that I especially don't understand what's in them. I don't like taking pills just because I seriously don't think that they're good or healthy for your body long term. Now, if this was to replace, if microdosing was to replace some of these pills, do you see that as a viable thing long term? Because I did read, before we got together, I was reading some people that were saying that for tests they did some microdosing and then they stopped, and it was like they really did have a hard time after stopping. They said that it really, the effects of what they were taking it for was almost worse. Like the depression seemed almost worse, or their anxiety.
Were they microdosing mushrooms?
Yes.
Okay.
And do you see? But what I'm asking is, I guess, do you see that as a long-term viable solution? If so, yeah. If yes, why? If no, why?
Well, I mean, my gut reaction to that is probably just that, again, circumstantial and personal. But ultimately, I think with any medicine, you don't want to be on it forever. Ultimately, if you can, if it's like you want it to be more of a vitamin or a supplement, not considered a medicine. So if ultimately, ideally, you just like you want to only take antidepressants for a specific amount of time. Yeah. You could. It might end up being like that for some people. It's like, hey, I have access to it, but really, I've realized that ultimately, after 2 or 3 months of taking it, you know, I've kind of gotten through the hard point in life or whatever physical problem that I was kind of going with, and then I do realize that maybe it did start to affect my mood a little bit, and the minute I just cut it out, I was past that hard point, and then my mental health came right back, and then I was good. Like, I have a buddy, actually, now that I'm saying that does exactly that, and he's one of the greatest dudes in the world.
It might work. It might almost work better for seasonal depression.
For sure, yeah.
Because I have seasonal depression, and I know, like, every year, you know, come around Halloween, I go get my pills, and then I'm on them till April, May. I get off them as soon as I can. I mean, I literally just use them to get me through that couple of months.
Yeah. See, maybe your, like, great-great-great-grandfather was, like, growing mad mushrooms in his butt during the winter time. Like, yo, I'm ready for winter because I get to grow my mushrooms and eat them all winter. And, you know, your genetics are just used to something.
I mean, it could be. It's
knows?
and I mean, I'm going to tell everybody here, you know, this is definitely something that I'm going to keep exploring. And if I end up using some of these, you know, CBD products or microdosing, I'll definitely be happy to report back to everybody and let them know how that's going, and maybe a follow-up show, maybe just a follow-up with a short little video of me just explaining that from a personal standpoint. I see a lot more benefit to trying these things, and I'm kind of excited about where it's going. I'm kind of excited about the medicinal possibilities, like I said, also with the personal connection to Alzheimer's and stuff. I mean, I'm really invested in seeing where all of this can go and kind of where this will lead.
I really think that, I could be wrong about this, but I think Oregon was the first place to actually decriminalize mushrooms, now that I'm thinking about it, for end-of-life care. So, like, if you were dying, you know, and, like, you had terminal cancer or something like that, I think that they were the first state that said it's clear that mushrooms are one of the most powerful things that someone at end of life can take to combat extreme anxiety. Because a lot of people have obviously, I can't imagine.
If you take enough, baby, you're leaving this planet on a spaceship.
Well, apparently it's like one of those things that, like, you talked about the anxiety. A lot of people that have reported having access to it, like, people have moved to Oregon when they knew they were going to be passing away within like 6 months or a year, because they really.
I would.
Yeah, I would too.
I would. A lot of people have that fear of dying also, just to
100%.
to be okay with it at that point.
I'm glad I remember that, because I think that was kind of the catalyst that kind of helped that, like, a place like Denver say, hey, like, Oregon did that a couple years ago, and it's worked fantastic for their, you know, population there,
absolutely.
and a lot of people are using it. And, so.
Absolutely. Before I wrap it up, you got anything, Marlena? Anything you'd like to add?
That was everything I had. For now, anyway.
Any last thoughts there, Sam? Sam will be, you're leaving to go to Oklahoma soon.
Yeah, probably next week.
Next week, so we probably won't see Sam for a little while, unless something crazy happens while Sam's gone. I'm going to have him promise me that if anything blows up and that we just need to know, he's going to text me and we'll somehow Skype or some shit.
Yeah, man. Could do like an on-site report.
But other than
just
that,
have you sitting there on screen.
But other than that, Sam will be gone for a little while, so safe travels and happy travels to you.
Thank
and
you, dude.
I hope
Thanks for
everything
having
goes
me.
great where you're going. And
It's been a pleasure.
when you get back, we will
definitely.
definitely do something. If you have nothing new to report cannabis-wise, maybe we'll just play some fun games or make a show out of something else. But I definitely appreciate you being here and spending time with me and giving up part of your day for me. I just wanted to end this. If you guys are all good, I was just going to go ahead and say, you know, I think that there's still a lot of conversation to be had here. I think that there's a lot of research going on. There's a lot of personal experiences going on. There's a lot of things happening with both the cannabis and the microdosing of mushrooms, or the psilocybin that we've been discussing. Psilocybin, right?
Yep.
That we've been discussing. I'm very excited to see where it goes. As I said, I'm very interested in even trying some of these things, because I think what we need to realize is that things that we've been told our whole lives, and things that we've kind of grown up with people saying, and kind of just things being illegal and things like that. I mean, I just think there's this whole world opening up that we may be finding cures to things. We may be finding interesting supplements and even vitamin type things, as Sam has said, and I think that we really need to keep an open mind about these things. So I'd really encourage anybody to comment on this video, and Sam will be available to answer questions. And I'd really like to get some discussions going. And even if you just want to discuss like the little fun part we had here, tell us about a trip you had. I mean, that'd be fun too. Or tell us about your opinions about the medicalization of these things, or where we're headed, or what your theories are about what's to come. Such a great topic to have conversations about, and such a interesting topic as far as where are we headed, what's going on.
But and just if I didn't say it earlier because I cannot remember, if if you're a vet or anybody that is a vet or anybody that just really suffers from PTSD, I just research this topic.
Absolutely.
Research psychedelic mushroom therapies. Research MDMA therapies. Research ketamine therapies. Research all those different therapies because they are powerful and they've been kept from us for a reason. And I sound like a conspiracy theorist saying that, but it's true and it's sad. But
anybody that speaks the truth gets accused of being a conspiracy theorist these days. So, and I agree with that 100%. I'm a huge supporter of our vets. I mean, regardless of how you feel about the government and what they do, there are people that go out there and risk their lives for us. And there are people that go out there and try to protect us on our home base here and their friends and families. And we definitely appreciate your service, and by all means, thank you for your service. And by all means, please look into these things and take care of yourself the best that you can. And that was a great point, Sam. Thank you for putting that out there because we really got to take care of each other. And I think some of these natural ways that are coming out might be the best solutions.